to your calls here as well. We'll open up the phone lines right away. 617-779-0985. The Red Sox open a 3-game series in Atlanta against the Braves. And I saw this. I'll just mention this quickly because I think it's noteworthy. Braves are going bad. Chris Sale pitched last night. And the Red Sox are pitching in this series Lucas Giolito, Walker Buehler, and Garrett Crochet. The point being, they're throwing their 3 best starters in this series. And so, given the way it's lined up, they should be in decent shape to win a series this weekend. And I mention that because obviously the Red Sox are in no shape to convince us that they're in shape to do anything given the way the season has gone thus far. It's been a massive disappointment. And normally when we start this show on a Friday, and I should add that Milliken is going to be joining us virtually, which he will do momentarily. So, in fact, Jimmy Stewart, our producer, tells me that Milliken's actually there right now. So, look, normally when we start this show on a Friday, we do it one of two ways. Either we all offer opening thoughts, sort of an agenda-free type of approach, as we do on Felger and Maz, or like we do most nights, we play a piece of audio, something from the game the night before, and we get into the Red Sox discussion that way. Here is what I want to do tonight. And I am throwing this at you two, meaning McCarthy and Milliken, without any advance warning. And I don't expect a rapid, answer, but I want you to give it a little thought, a couple of seconds of thought, as well as the listeners. And I want you to give me an answer to this question. What's the biggest problem with the Red Sox? Of all the things that we've discussed and that are out there, tell me, what do you think is the biggest problem with the Red Sox? McCarthy, do you have an answer already?
Yeah, the answer is culture.
Okay.
Overall, right now, their biggest problem is probably the roster with the injuries to Bregman because they don't have a response. They don't have an answer to that. But the big picture issue with the Red Sox, Maz, easily, undeniably, is culture and leadership and the environment that you're bringing these 3 kids up into. It's not good enough.
Okay. Milliken, you have an answer on that? What's the biggest problem with the Red Sox right now?
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar spot as McCarthy. I think it's buy-in and everyone kind of being on the same page here. When you have to go through different situations of, not being able to get your star player, your franchise player dating back to the offseason to understand the pathway you're moving forward because you failed to communicate him. A guy in Alex Cora who's known as a player's manager. A guy in Craig Breslow who arguably his greatest strength besides the pitching stuff that everyone wanted to highlight was that he was going to understand players and be able to communicate those messages and avoid some of the drama and pitfalls that Chaim Bloom fell into. Hell, you even have the Roman Anthony drama going on where I got to listen to Craig Breslow gaslight me when we know how badly this roster could use Roman Anthony as he tells me that he struggles to hit, certain pitches in the zone and he's not able to do this and that while he's tearing up AAA as the second youngest player at the level, while Alex Cora is also talking to the media and telling everyone he's kicking the door down. It doesn't feel like anyone's on the same page here. And ultimately, I think it goes back to the offseason. The whole organization isn't moving forward in one direction, which is something they tried to make everyone believe when they told you the dial was turning to the present. It was about winning now. It doesn't feel that way because not only are your players not behaving that way, your manager isn't, and your CBO isn't.
Okay, so look, this is a roundabout way of getting to the point because I think we're all in agreement. But I'm going to boil it down to an even more specific question that, frankly, Chris Gasper answered on Felger and Maz today. And when he said it, again, in the discussion, sometimes I always found this when I covered the team. I'd be having conversations with people on the field before the game, in the press box before the game, what have you. And then in the middle of that conversation, I would stumble into a story idea. Like, oh, that's a good idea. That triggers this thought in my head. We should write about that. And then inevitably I would write about it. And so during the conversation tonight with Chris Gasper, or this afternoon with Chris Gasper on Felger and Maz, a question popped into my head that I think has been at the core of all of the Red Sox problems over the last 2 or 3 years. And you guys touched on it in a more general sense, and I'm not blaming you for it. I'm just saying that I think we're on the same wavelength, which gets down to culture. Okay, I think it really stems from one thing in particular that is at the core of their difficulties, and it popped up during this exchange with Chris Gasper.
And I thought Sean McAdam had a really good story that I saw in Mass Live where he was talking to Alex Cora and talking about this element of having to be in a situation where you're trying to win and develop at the same time. And Cora said to Sean, it's trying to win as many games as possible, but also teaching the game. That's really hard, and I think those two things are in direct conflict. And I don't think there's a lot of managers in Boston who could do that successfully. I just don't.
Chris, do you think Cora believes in the organization?
No.
Okay, I think it's that simple. And again, I say that simple. That's a complicated question and a complicated answer because it really covers a whole range of topics. But Milliken, you tell me. Let me ask you the same question. Do you think Alex Cora believes in the organization?
Guess what? I don't care. You signed that extension last year.
Okay, not the question. Not the question. We'll get to that momentarily. Start with the first question. Do you think Alex Cora believes in the organization?
I think he did entering the season. I think, coming from the offseason in, I think at this point in time with the current state of the roster, he doesn't believe this team can win.
Okay, do you think he believed in the organization last year?
No.
Do you think he believed in the organization the year before?
No.
Okay. So why did he believe in the organization going into this year?
Because you went and got his number one lieutenant and you were able to go get the Alex Bregman. You were able to go over the luxury tax and build a roster that I think even to him and even to the biggest doubters of the Red Sox thought, bare minimum, this is a playoff team here. I think now you see it and you have Marcelo Meyer batting cleanup for you less than a week after getting called up. He's seen the leaves. He knows what it's going to look like the next couple months. Because guess what? The roster is the roster. Comments are coming back. We're starting to hear a lot of the same language you heard when Chaim Bloom was here. And really that June, July, August wall that they would hit, it feels like that language is coming out months earlier this year.
Okay, so they sold him on it by bringing Bregman in. McCarthy, do you believe that Alex Cora believes in the organization?
Absolutely not. But he got the money.
Okay.
And that's why he was willing to ignore it for a little while. But he never believed in the organization. They just paid him, and everybody has their price, Maz. You have a price, I have a price, Jimmy has a price, Milliken has a price. You would go work somewhere, even if you didn't believe in what they were doing, for a certain price, and the Red Sox met Alex Cora's price. And at the core, Alex Cora is the problem.
Okay, so look, here's what I'm getting at. Is that Alex Cora is the wrong manager for this team, and he always has been. And we've talked about this for the last 2 or 3 years, and we can blame Cora here. And to Milliken's point, Cora agreed to the contract. Cora signed the contract. And so when Milliken says it doesn't matter whether he believes, on some level, I get it. He signed the contract. It's your job to believe. Shut up and do the job. In the same breath, it's a hard thing to fake when things go wrong. And this is where it gets tested. When things break down and the manager looks at the organization and says, you guys don't know what the hell you're doing, it's doomed to fail. It is doomed to fail. And it's been this way for a few years. And part of the reason this triggered this thought in me today, because again, I asked Gasper the question in a way that I don't think I've asked it before. And that part's on me. Do you think Cora believes in the organization? Gasper, without hesitating, said no.
No.
Okay, Jimmy, just play the whole question and answer. Like there wasn't, he really didn't, there was no, what's the word I'm looking for?
It was Devers-esque.
No, but there was
no hesitation.
There was no equivocation. There was no attempt to soften it or explain it.
No.
There was, again, the question and the answer. Like if we could play the whole thing.
And I thought,
just the question and the answer of whether he believes.
and I thought Sean McAdam had a really good story that I saw on Mass Live where he was talking to Alex Cora and talking about this element of having to be in a situation where you're trying to win and develop at the same time. And Cora said to Sean, it's trying to win as many games as possible, but also teaching the game. That's really hard. And I think those two things are in direct conflict. And I don't think there's a lot of managers in Boston who could do that successfully. I just don't.
Chris, do you think Cora believes in the organization?
No.
I mean, there's no gray area there. There's no pause. There is no, well, yeah, I think he does. Or like, for example, Tyler, when you answered the question, and again, I'm not picking on you, but you said, well, I think he did at the beginning of this year, right? Because you
Correct.
look at it and say, okay, when they got Bregman, he was on board. But when I asked you about last year, if he believed, you said no.
And I do want to, simplify that or clear it up a little bit. I think going into the year, he didn't. I think hearing what they were willing to do with the trade deadline, something that Chaim Bloom wasn't willing to do at that time, kind of the conversations building up to that, seeing the success with the rotation through the first half. Keep in mind, this is a rotation that finished 7th in all of baseball last year. I think he saw signs that were different than what the previous regime had shown you. But I think that all factored into him signing that extension at the time, as well as them meeting their price, being aggressive, kind of publicly bending the knee and showing how desperate they were, that they were willing to go to Colorado to get this thing done and make sure it was finished. I think all of that does stand out, but it seems like it quickly evaporated this year when stuff did hit the wall.
So you understand, though, Tyler, they had to sell him on it.
Of course, that's my whole thing.
They had they had to sell Cora on it. First of all, they had to give him a contract. They had to give him the 3 years and the $22.5 million, and then they had to appease his concerns about the roster, and they had to go out and do that, and then, okay, I'll sign on. And then what happened? They brought all these guys to the minor leagues in such a haphazard manner that it really makes you wonder what the hell they were thinking. Christian Campbell was not ready to play in the major leagues defensively. He was not. We can say that without any, what's the word I'm looking for? Hesitation or doubt right now.
It is unequivocal.
He was not prepared to play defensively in the major leagues. The offense is debatable because he got up to a good start, but once the league adjusted to him, he's nosedived. But they shoehorned him in there. And we played the comments for you earlier in the week from Breslow at the press conference when they announced Campbell's signing that frankly are embarrassing. That the Red Sox were celebrating the organizational success of Christian Campbell when he hadn't played in the big leagues for 2 weeks yet. That's embarrassing. And now it's being shoved in their face by people like me because what are you doing celebrating that before he's played 10 games? Or when he's barely played 10 games? Or celebrate it when he's played 3 years. Okay, you can say this is why we signed him. You can explain that we believe in him, but you can't declare him a success before he's actually played. That's just a massive mistake. And the Cora part of it, Cora's been a bad fit for this type of organization from the very beginning. When they brought him here in 2018, they had a team that was ready to win. And they just needed a manager that could translate it to the field and get them over the hump. This team needs to be nursed. Still. And they've put Meyer in a bad spot. They've put Campbell in a bad spot. Now maybe they are reluctant to put Anthony into it as well. Let's see how that goes. But to me, if you asked me, what is the number one problem with the Red Sox? I would tell you that the manager and the organization don't see it the same way. And that rubs off in the clubhouse. Excuse me. It rubs off in the product on the field. And it rubs off to anybody within 100 miles of it because we can all see it. It's a mess. They never should have rehired him. When I asked someone, is he the right guy for this team? The answer I got was, we believe he is. They're wrong. It was a mistake. We'll take your call. Forgive me, I've had a cold the last couple of days, so it causes me to sort of choke on my words. Not that that doesn't always happen. We'll get to your calls when we come back on the Baseball Hour.
You're listening to the Baseball Hour with Tony Maz.
They bumped Devers. Whose fault is that? Red Sox. They caused that. They did not communicate with Devers well. But then, number 2, Tristan Casas gets hurt. Devers won't play first base. He said no. Whose fault is that? Raphael Devers. But now we're in a new place, D-Row. Alex Bregman gets hurt, and now they either can't ask Devers or he said no. We don't know, but he's not playing third base. So that's on the Red Sox. Roster construction is a science and an art. And now the Red Sox have to look at it again with this huge baseball ops department. Yeah. They are one of the originators of thinking forward in baseball. And now you can't use your $300 million third baseman at third base because you've botched the relationship. You got to fix the relationship no matter what it takes.
100%. I can't think like that. Listen, I was a utility player, BK. I knew my role on the team and I was willing to go anywhere. I wasn't a franchise pillar. So to think in Devers' shoes, hard for me. All I can say is behind the scenes, I can't believe one of his teammates is not coming up to him going, what are we doing? We trying to win a World Series? Right. You're making huge money. That being said, they've obviously behind closed doors promised Devers, we are not moving you. You are a DH. We apologize for how we handled the third base situation. So
he's 28.
I just feel like if I'm the owner of the team, I walk in and go, hey, pal, you're either playing third base or we're going to figure out something.
Organization. And I say the organization because whether it's Bloom or whether it's Breslow, it's the ownership clearly wants to run it a certain way now. Alex Cora is the wrong guy. He's the wrong guy. He's not the right manager for this kind of team. And they keep wanting to shoehorn him in there, and he took the money, so I'm not blaming one side over the other. Cora didn't have to take the money, and he did. But he was clearly upset enough at one point where he was running around basically telling anyone who would listen that he's out of here. So then all of a sudden they give him the contract, they make him a couple of promises, and everything's fixed. You know what it is? It's a bad marriage. And what happens in bad marriages? The people who suffer are the kids. Okay, that's what happens. Because they get caught in the middle of the crossfire. The parents can't see eye to eye on the way to do things. So the kids are the one who suffer. And that's what's happening here. You know what they should do? Divorce. Everybody's happier. They can go get a manager that fits what they're trying to do. Cora can go on to another organization and manage a competitive, contending team like he should be doing because that's the kind of manager he is. And frankly, I would say Cora's more right for the market than they are at this stage because I think Cora wants to manage in a place where baseball matters and every big league game matters. But in the same breath, and I said this at the time, and I'm sorry to ramble on and on, Cora never should have signed that contract because when he did, he gave up the right to bitch. He knew what it was probably going to be, and they made him some promises, and he bought it. It was a mistake. So now, McCarthy, what'd you say to me off the air during the break last segment?
Yeah, the question that you asked Chris Gasper is, does Alex Cora believe in the Red Sox? To which Chris said no, and I think we would all agree. No, Alex Cora does not believe in the Red Sox. He just got paid enough money to continue working in a place where he didn't believe in the company, the organization, you name it. The real question we should be asking at this point is, when did the Red Sox stop believing in Alex Cora? Because it is increasingly obvious, I think to everybody, Maz, that this thing doesn't work. You're right. It's a bad marriage. It's not going to work. So are the Red Sox going to be willing to eventually cut bait and pay him to go away? Because that's the biggest question here. He's under contract for the next 3 years, and he's a highly paid manager. Are they going to do what's right by the future of the franchise, both in the present and the future, by moving on from Alex Cora? Or are they just going to keep letting this thing get worse and worse and worse? Because I'm telling you, it's not going to get any better. It's not.
So Tyler Milliken's remote, which means that I can't see him, and I don't know when he wants to jump in or not. So, Tyler, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
No, I do think there's certain things you look at Cora, and even the timing of when he got to Houston. I think AJ Hinch is an incredible comparison because it was obviously the guy he served under and worked under. And, when AJ Hinch got to Houston in 2015 and 2016, those teams needed nursing. They weren't, the 2017 World Series champion Astros. You still had a young core that was really kind of figuring it out. And you go back to when Alex Cora joined the Astros as a bench coach, it was right before 2017. So, he wasn't there for those two nurturing years in 15 and 16 when they were really trying to get those young guys to elevate, the Carlos Correas of the world, and become these franchise cornerstones and pillars. So I do sit there and really wonder, like, is that something he just never truly fell in love with? It wasn't a part of coaching that he was into or able to kind of connect with, because you look at what AJ Hinch has been able to do in Detroit, and he's done exactly that. He has nursed that young core, and you see them thriving with the most wins in all of Major League Baseball right now. I think that is a great way to kind of compare two different guys who come from the same place, who kind of Cora always got a lot of the benefit of the doubt and hyped up because of what AJ Hinch taught him and working underneath him, but it doesn't seem like those traits have actually ever aligned perfect.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Did Cora ever manage in the minor leagues?
No.
Nope.
He managed Team Puerto Rico, right? The World Baseball Classic, and that was it.
Right. He was at ESPN, and then he went to the Astros.
Okay, so that's the thing, is he was never put in any sort of environment where he had to develop the players. And again, I'm not blaming him for that. I'm just, neither was Aaron Boone, okay? But they put him in New York, and they threw him in the middle of a pennant race, and he was basically in the big leagues again. And I think the same thing is true of Cora. And I think that now they've kind of put him in this spot where he doesn't fit. So he's not a guy that came up managing through the minor leagues and was in player development.
But he wants to nurse the veteran players. Those are the only guys he wants to take care of.
Well, because
Devers.
that's what he's used to. And again, I'm not telling you it's right or wrong. I'm just telling you that it's a bad fit.
And those players don't even care to be nursed by him. They don't even respect him enough at this point in time to buy in after a month of doing it.
Jackson Winchester. Jack, go ahead.
Listen, I think it all comes back down to the leadership on the team. You got Devers making almost $28 million a year, not willing to help around and play a different position. That rubs off on the young guys. It's a relatively young team. You got making fielding errors all over the place.
Yeah, so look, Jack, that's part of it again, but I would tell you this. Like, okay, let's use Cora Devers as a spinoff of this discussion. Why do you think Cora sides with Devers?
It's a good question, because he's his guy.
I have a reason.
Yeah,
go
for
ahead,
it, Milliken.
Yeah, I think when it comes to him siding with him, I don't think he agrees with it. I know a lot of people are going to be out there and say, oh, Alex Cora wants Raphael Devers a DH. We talked about this on the podcast. Jared backed it as well. You listen to anything that was coming out of that team over the offseason. Alex Cora was a believer that Raphael Devers could play first base. I think the real problem was when they got to camp and how sour that relationship got, to the point Cora was calling him out publicly, saying, no, he kept telling me he wants to be on the backfield. I told him too bad. He's going to go out there and play the games. I think this is the only way they were able to keep that relationship in a place in the dugout going into the year where they were on decent terms and not going back and forth. I think Craig Breslow had to be the bad guy here, and that's why he was the one who made the request, because if Cora and Devers' relationship got any worse, you were getting that trade request rather quickly.
Yeah, and so I would tell you that Cora ended up siding with Raphael Devers on it, certainly that's how it looked. Because why? Because he doesn't believe in the organization. That's why. I come back to that same thing. Like so the caller can say Raphael Devers doesn't want to set the example. It starts with Cora. Cora doesn't believe in what they're doing either.
He knows he can get away with it.
So he knows that they're probably in agreement, because at trading deadlines in other years, Cora was probably as pissed as anybody that they weren't investing in the big league club. So what happens? What does Devers say? Go out and do your job. Bring in someone else to play first base. Don't look at me to solve the problem. Which is basically what Cora was saying at these trading deadlines. Go get some players and we'll win. I can't make the players play better. You have to get me good players. Matt's in Boston. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Tony. So, listen, all this talk about the Red Sox organization and then the approach and everything like that, I think it's, part of the problem, and a big part of the problem, is way more basic than that. Cora's not a good manager. He came in and, inherited a...
Matt, let me stop you real quick. Did you think he was a good manager in 2018?
Well, I think that... when you come in and you have a roster like that, it's not hard to be a good manager.
Okay, let me stop you again, because John Farrell with that same roster didn't do nearly what Cora did. So, again, the manager on that team made a difference. You have to acknowledge that.
100%. But I guess here's the thing that got me thinking about this. I read an article about how Chris Sale, Nathan Eovaldi, and Pivetta, they leave the Red Sox and they light it up. It's like that's coaching. They're same players, right? And I understand Sale and his injury history, but we're talking about the same players. They're underperforming here. They go somewhere else, and they're killing it. Matt, that's coaching.
Yeah, Matt, which players did you mention again? Because this is something I want to get to with Milliken.
I think it was Eovaldi, Pivetta, and Sale, right?
Eovaldi, Pivetta, and Sale. Okay, thank you. Hold the thought. and continue to listen because I know Milliken wants to touch on this too. I think this is an interesting point. I just don't put it all on Cora.
How could you?
Okay, so Milliken, hold the thought. Don't go anywhere. We got headlines coming up with Kevin. Oh, no, McCarthy's going to do the headlines. Sorry, I do this all the time. It's like unbelievable. McCarthy's sitting right next to me, and I'm looking at Majori. It's like I'm like Pavlov's dog.
It's habit because 4 nights a week Majori does it.
I know. It's like you would think I'd have the presence of mind to realize that no, the other guy's on my right, and I make the same mistake every week, which means that I am a moron.
Cora makes a mistake every night, sometimes 2.
I'm like a trained dog. That's what I am.
At least Maz is trying.
Trained dog.
Roof.
McCarthy's got your headlines. The notion or the idea that players are leaving the Red Sox and excelling or playing better than they did when they were here. I want to explore that.
second, he's played third, he's played left, center, right. He's outstanding athlete. Should not be at first base, and first base is not easy, incredibly hard, as Ron Washington told us. So a lot of stuff going on here that's kind of off the field. It's not helping them, but I think on the field, this team should be decent. And in the American League, it's not going to take 90 wins to get in the playoffs. I think
that is a good point.
Just concerned.
The diluted league does help their chances. Yeah. And by the way, you mentioned Cam. He's going to try first base this weekend. Soger was there last night. Cliffy, how about you? Concern, panic, or doom?
This is panic.
Good.
Yeah, this is like, when you have the amount of players that you just mentioned. Bregman, significant quad tear. Mm-hmm. Devers, in the situation that they're dealing with him not playing the field. Tristan Casas is not there. Like, you have so many moving parts in the wrong direction.
Or you have younger players. But if you can just avoid stupid mistakes, you really, in this American League, you can win. When I say win more than you lose. Okay, I don't think they're winning a World Series. But the point being is that I still think the season has got some value. But I want to get to something, the previous caller brought this up, and I want to ask both of you about it because I've had two sort of simultaneous discussions with each of you, but not with both of you at the same time. Milliken, I texted you today and asked you, even before we get that call in the last segment, I texted you today and said, is it just me or are there guys that go to other organizations and play better? It feels like there are an alarming number of those lately, guys who leave the Red Sox and perform better than they did when they were here, specifically pitchers. So true or false, and tell me who they are, and then we'll get to the next question.
Yeah, so I do agree. There is a list of that, and I think you look at some of the guys here, and the Tanner Houcks, the Brian Bayos, Liam Hendricks, who they signed to rehab and come back, Lucas Giolito, what he's looked like. But yeah, there have been players, and it's kind of gone back to, I'd say, 2020, and that's where you get the Jeffrey Springs of the world, and that's when you didn't have the proper coaching, right? And that's where Ryan Brazier, who left here and immediately became a key piece with the Dodgers, they taught him a cutter in 2 weeks, and all of a sudden he was 2018 Ryan Brazier for the Dodgers as they went on a World Series run and tried to do their own thing. You had Zach Littell, who was here for a cup of coffee in 2023 when you still had Dave Bush here not being able to do his job. Nate Eovaldi going to the Rangers just had a recent injury scare, but he's right at the front of the Cy Young conversation. Chris Sale going and winning a Cy Young in his first year with Atlanta, who, if you want to talk blame for anyone, I think Alex Cora in 2023 played a major part in Chris Sale not having the year he was going to. Because if you go back to that May, you saw what he was doing in 2024 that month. But Cora rode him so hard, 7 innings, 8 innings, that he broke down and the shoulder started barking, and you had the stress fracture there. Luis Arias, who was a trade deadline guy 2 years ago now, putting together a really good year in Oakland, was a solid, part-time player in Seattle last year, something they were starving for when they dealt for him. JD Martinez, a lot of people don't remember that. Left in 2022, 2023, goes to the Dodgers, has like one more real prime-esque year for them with an OPS that was 100 points higher. So, there is a list of guys that have left here and had very successful years. And I think for a long time, coaching was a major part of that. And Andrew Bailey was supposed to fix it. So far, now you introduce a Nick Pivetta this year in San Diego. It gets a little harder, especially when your own rotation takes a step back.
Yeah, so I want to focus on the pitching. Okay, McCarthy, why are guys leaving here and being better elsewhere?
Well, I think it speaks to issues the Red Sox have had across general managers. This is an organizational problem, the Red Sox have struggled to develop pitching forever now. This is not a Craig Breslow thing, and in his defense, it is early on, right? It's 2 years into the Breslow thing. They certainly did not develop any pitching under Chaim Bloom. Most of the pitching the Red Sox got was outside of the organization under Dave Dombrowski. He at least identified those guys, so succeeded in that. But you have to go Ben Cherington. You go back 12, 13, 15 years at this point. The Red Sox have developed very few pitchers, and the pitchers who have been here, Milliken just rattled off a bunch of them. Guys who have not succeeded here, have struggled here, and have gone on to succeed elsewhere. Martin Perez, Nick Pivetta, Chris Sitt, you name it. It's a problem that has existed for years and years and years. It's not just about the pitching coach. It's not just about who the GM is. I think this runs as far deep into the organization as you possibly can get. Major leagues, minor leagues, They got to do a complete and total clear out of everything pitching related in this system.
Tyler, go
I
ahead,
disagree.
yeah.
I disagree very heavily with that. I think what they're doing in the minor leagues right now is actually something that's popping, where you just had two guys, Peyton Tolley and Brandon Clark, break into the top 100. You're seeing guys make significant gains. Richard Fitz, which Craig Breslow did trade for. Hunter Dobbins even, I think, showing stuff that, while the surface numbers aren't anything that knock your socks off right now, I think a lot of people see him as a big league arm in that way. I do think where you turn your attention to is what's going on at the major league level, where you have guys regressing regularly. I think the pipeline and what they're targeting right now in the minors is real. I think there's real momentum there, and I think that's something they were starving for under, a CBO. I think Hein Bloom helped you get there positionally again. I think Craig Breslow has gotten you there pitching wise, but at the big league level, the Andrew Bailey thing becomes a real conversation.
Okay, but Bailey is a Breslow guy, right, Tyler? So, okay,
yep.
So let me ask you this: the pitching philosophy. Does Cora agree with it?
It felt like last year no one was more hyped and more excited talking about the pitching philosophy than him. At this point in time, though, I think the inability to adjust seemingly from the second half of last year, which you saw things start to go off the rails, and it feels like it's continued into this year. I think it's another thing he's probably lost faith in over time.
Okay, so now let me ask you the same thing about the offensive philosophy. Okay, and part of me is reading now from something Dan Shaughnessy wrote in today's Globe, and I have
great piece
in the cut that we played earlier from Chris Gasper. Gasper mentions something that Sean McAdam wrote after a discussion with Cora, and I would say these two conversations are kind of similar. Basically, Shaughnessy and McAdam talking to Cora about what's wrong with the team and how do you fix it. And I think they're both worth reading. But let me read to you a comment from Cora when asked about the strikeouts. This is in the Shaughnessy piece. "We've got to put the ball in play," acknowledged Cora. "We know we live in an environment that strikeouts are part of it, meaning part of the game. But when you strike out is what matters. It has happened a lot. You saw what the Brewers did. They put the ball in play and things happened. That's something that we have talked about for a while, but we haven't been able to execute." I have said this to the point where I feel like I'm turning blue in the face. That Cora, how many times over the last 3 years has Cora talked about putting the ball in play?
1,000,000 times.
Okay, meanwhile, they brought in Driveline the last couple of years. Their strikeouts have skyrocketed. They can't put the ball in play. Do you think Cora believes in the offensive philosophy?
No, I'm sure he does not.
Milliken?
Yeah, I think he does, because he's made the case to keep Pete Fatsy here for year after year after year, despite being very mediocre and I don't think ever opening anyone's eyes.
Okay, but
Does Pete Fatsy believe in it?
I think he's part of that movement. He is a guy who's always bought into analytics. He is somewhere more in the middle there, but the fact that they've chose to keep Pete Fatsy here, despite runners in scoring position really being arguably the biggest weakness he's had over the years. Keep in mind, the Red Sox are number one in all of baseball with strikeouts with runners in scoring position right now. Pete Fatsy has kind of been the one connect, the guy that has survived that Alex Cora kept on this staff. So I think what they're doing hitting coach-wise in there, Cora is a proponent and a supporter of.
Okay, so...
And I'll go to you even in the fifth inning of the second game of this Brewers series when Marcelo Meyer hit that double and then got thrown out at third base. Where was the Trevor Story bunt there? I think we've seen moments this year, him getting at Ceddanne Rafaela for not understanding how to do small ball and some of those things. That was a moment in that inning where I think you want to play small ball. Craig Breslow said yesterday that we need to do more of that, and that's something we're looking to try and do more with the current state of the offense. I didn't see a push for it there, and that felt like the perfect spot for it.
Okay, so again, that is sort of an in-game managerial decision, though, Tyler. I guess what I'm getting at is this. Because I've heard different things about Pete Fatsy. One is that he's more of an old school guy that is loyal to Cora, and there's a connection between Cora and Fatsy, a little bit of what you were saying, but that he's not necessarily a driveline guy. So this is what I'm getting at. Breslow's clearly in charge of the pitching. Right? We all agree on that?
No doubt.
Okay,
yes.
He was hired to build a pitching program and brought in Bailey, who's his pitching coach, and that the whole thing is gearing towards a pitching philosophy that they're going to filter throughout the organization. I think we all agree on that. So is that how this thing has been divided up? Are they trying to pacify everybody here? Cora gets the offense, Breslow gets the pitching staff, and that, they're going to sort of navigate it that way. And does that mean that Cora gets to pick If Breslow's going to pick the pitching coach, Cora gets to pick the hitting coach. This is how the type of politics that can exist in organization when it comes to assembling staffs. So now you're digging in. It's a battle of philosophies, and everyone's clamoring for their territory when the fact is that the team suffers as a result of it.
I think it's a great point, Maz. And, Breslow's running the pitching side of things. It feels like he has delegated a lot of the hitting side of things to Driveline, because Breslow's a pitching guy, and to Milliken's point, it seemingly has improved the lower minors. Obviously, it hasn't affected the big leagues at this point. It feels to me like he's letting Driveline run the offense, where does Pete Fatsi and Alex Cora fit in on that? Do they buy in on that philosophy? I think that's the most important question, because obviously Bailey is in lockstep with Breslow. Where do Cora and Fatsi fit in with what Driveline's doing?
I'm just telling you, when there are fractures, they manifest themselves on the coaching staff. And so this is how it happens. I've seen it happen. That a manager feels like he can't trust his pitching coach, so what does the organization do? Oh, we're going to bring in a new bench coach, or we're going to get a special advisor that travels with the team so that he has someone to bounce his own off ideas in and confide in. Let me just take a call here. Drew's in Boston. Go ahead, Drew.
Hey, Tony, so first of all, with regards to what you're giving that other caller grief about with Farrell, you're dead wrong. So I or you could have managed that 18 team to a World Series. Farrell won back-to-back division titles, something Cora never did. And he only lost that playoff run in 17 because Cora was on the other side cheating, which has been proven. So now to my point. Cora and Devers have shown you that they are not only losing players and manager, they're okay with it. You got to get rid of that DNA. You cannot have that around the next generation, your young talent, the guys you're trying to show how to be professional. I'm sorry, I don't like to trade our best player, but you can't have that kind of mentality and showing that in the clubhouse and the manager excusing it. And then it goes above that to Kennedy. I agree.
Drew, I'm going to stop you there just because you're going on too long. Here's what I'll tell you. That, you want to trade Devers, go ahead and trade him. I'm just telling you that I think the source of the problem really started with Cora. So to me, go to the source. The fracture with Devers is partly the result of the fracture between Cora and the organization. That's what I think. Okay, so once you take Cora out, can you bring in a guy who can get through to Devers? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe then you're forced to trade him. But good luck trying to find a guy who right now is leading the league in walks, having the best year of his career. Of all the things that are wrong with the Red Sox right now, Raphael Devers' bat is not one of them. It's one of the few things that has gone right. Milliken, hold the thought because we're up against it. We'll wrap up our thoughts when we come back on the Baseball Hour. So Milliken was chomping at the bit right before we went to break. I know that there was something he wanted to yell at me about, or it sounded like it. So, Tyler, what do you got?
Honestly, Maz, I don't remember. I was sitting here. Jace just told me you were coming to me, too. I have no idea. What did we finish last segment with?
It had something to do with the coaching staff, I think. Again, this is the problem. You're in the heat of the moment. I was telling you that it was about Pete Fatsi, the hitting coach, and I'd be willing to bet that Cora's in charge of the, basically Cora's got his guy running the hitting, and Breslow's got his guy running the pitching, which immediately creates this sort of territorial, tit for tat. You get it just becomes very sort of abrasive and confrontational by nature. But go ahead.
Yeah, that it makes you wonder, right? You talk about someone being in the dugout, maybe in Pete Fatsi, that could sit there with Alex Cora and have a little bit more of that balance, that in between. Like when Alex Cora got hired, it was supposed to be, well, yes, he's old school, but he's able to, help get some of the newer age stuff into the players and for them to understand it. Then you still have the Dylan Lawson situation, which we talked a lot about a month ago when the offense was really going through it for the first time this year, where you have someone who's working very closely in the minor leagues with the big three, the Fantastic Four when Kyle Teal was down there, whatever you want to call it, who's now also on the big league roster, who is very analytically heavy. So it makes you sit there and kind of question, maybe there are different philosophies going on in that dugout right now.
So Tyler,
maybe Cora and Fatsi are one side, and then you have Dylan Lawson, who is very analytical in his approach.
Okay, so remind me quickly and remind the listeners quickly. Dylan Lawson came over from the Yankees when?
Entering last year, he joined the organization and then was promoted. He was essentially a minor league hitting coordinator working at AAA and AA with their top guys. The season prior, he was the Yankees hitting coach, got fired in the middle of the year, couldn't really communicate his message.
So hold on. He got fired in 2023 and came to the Red Sox in 2024.
Correct.
So he came here when Breslow came here.
Correct.
So Breslow hired him.
Correct.
Okay. And now he's in the clubhouse basically offering a different viewpoint on things that Fatsi would offer.
It's a possibility, right? I think it's something you factor in, and that they really wanted him on the big league coaching staff this year stood out in a pretty significant way to me as well.
Okay,
because
so
you knew those young guys were coming through.
Yeah, so is this why they're striking out like crazy with men in scoring position? Because, the players are getting mixed messages from the coaching staff? Could that be part of the reason?
Too many cooks in the kitchen. You have one guy saying one thing, maybe you have another guy saying a different thing, and guys are going to go to the guy they like more and all that, and you're going to get an inconsistent approach. It's a mess, Maz. It's a mess.
So, Tyler, this is what I'm getting at, and I'll leave you with this. You've got, warring philosophies in the clubhouse. That's what you've got. If Alex Cora doesn't believe in the organization, and remember that Craig Breslow, as Jimmy Stewart has pointed out a million times, was like the 12th person interviewed for the GM job. Okay, the Red Sox plan when they interviewed Breslow initially was to bring him in as the pitching coordinator, and that eventually he could grow into a chief baseball officer type of role. That's what they believed. As it turned out, they had to hire him as the chief baseball officer because they couldn't find anyone to take the effing job. So what you have is a pitching guy running the organization, and now the hitting guy that he brought with him is sort of working alongside Cora's guy in the clubhouse. Meanwhile, Cora doesn't believe in what they're doing organizationally, and I doubt that Breslow believes in what Cora's doing. So there you go.
It's a good situation. I feel good about the future of the Red Sox,
Excellent.
Maz. Uplifting. Thank you for that.
Tyler, don't you think we've solved all the problems now?
Yeah, I think they hire us all tomorrow. We might be able to get the Red Sox to the World Series this year.
Let me restate that. We haven't solved the problems. We've identified them. This is what we've done. So our further identified them. Anyway, thanks to both of you guys, as always.
See you, Maz. Have
Appreciate
a good
it. Again, Tyler Milliken joining us via Zoom. McCarthy here alongside, as he is always on emergency duty. Stu. McCarthy's like our Tim Wakefield. Whatever we need is what he does. He can start, he can relieve, he can swing, swing man. You get the idea.
I do, and the Red Sox can't afford him, so he's ours.
He can pretty much fulfill
something close to that.
And he spot started last night, really did anything that we need him to do. So McCarthy's got your headlines.
It's not just the games. It's Toucher and Hardy. Solak